In this video, I'm going to be replacing a broken internal hose assembly on this Dyson DC66. I think it's the same for a 41 and a 65, maybe a few others. And you can just see the plastic broke. So basically the wand will still work for suction, but it won't cross over and connect to the beater bars. And there's the internal hose assembly. I have watched a few videos that other people have made on YouTube about this, and I'm going to do this with a lot less disassembly than some of the other videos show. So really I'll just be taking a few screws off instead of tons. You do need Torx bits for this, and the needle nose pliers were helpful. This first one comes off with just a star, and that's pretty much it. Obviously that piece is broken. Now you do need to remove the two balls on either side of the Dyson. This one that has the filter on it just has a big blue piece of plastic, maybe purple, I don't know, and it just spins off lefty-loosey, and eventually it comes off. And then you can just take the filter and pull that off and put it out of the way for now. If you want to clean it, clean it. If you want to buy a new one, buy a new one, but it's not necessary as part of this video. Now the other side of the ball just has a plastic cap on it. You just give it a quarter turn to the left, and that should pop off. And then there's another piece of plastic in there that has a nut on the inside, and then you just turn that to the left, and obviously you got to turn it a whole bunch because it has to come off the screw, but eventually it will come out all the way, and you can remove that side of the ball as well. And once that side of the ball is off, there is a washer there, just make sure you don't lose that, and put everything off to the side. I am going to take off the beater bar for this just to make it a little bit easier. Now to do this, I'm just taking off 3 screws. So there's one right here, and it's going to allow this piece of plastic to slide back, and I'm going to pull out the internal hose assembly without taking the whole thing apart. The second screw I'm taking off is this one right here. There's a big cutout for it. And I'll show you the piece of plastic that pulls back afterwards. And here's the third screw. That's pretty much it. Other than that, there's 4 screws that hold in the internal hose assembly. Obviously those need to come out, but you can see how that sort of separates. I'm not going to take anything else off the vacuum. And there's the new internal hose assembly. It's going to mount in there like that. You can see bits of the old one sticking out. And I'm going to pull the old hose assembly straight out as it sits right now. So there are 4 screws that hold the internal hose assembly in place. You can see them there, 1, 2. There's screw number 3, and there's screw number 4. Now once that one's out, this thing is free to move and slide out. So I'll turn it back over, and I found that you can just take this hose assembly and pull it straight back. It's a little tight. You may have to sort of move it around a little bit, but by and large it just slides out. So that's the big difference of how I did it versus everybody else, whereas everyone else was taking off the entire clamshell piece there with a few more screws and a bunch of plastic bits as well. Getting it back in isn't that hard either. I found if you just stretch the hose out, push it through first, and then you can slide the entire assembly into the vacuum this way. Of course you have to manipulate it around a little bit. It is a tight fit, but ultimately you don't have to take off any more screws. There's no little white plastic thing that you need to line up, nothing like that. You just need to work it around a little bit until it slides into place. And there it goes. Now when you're putting the screws on, you do need to put your fingers inside of the Dyson and just push the internal hose assembly towards that piece of plastic that it's going to screw into, but it's really not that difficult. So I'll put in the first screw, really in no particular order. Screw number 2, obviously it's in fast motion to speed things up a little bit. And there's the third screw going in. And now I'll install the 4th and final screw. And that's pretty much it. So I think this is a lot easier technique, even though you do need to manipulate it around a little bit to get it into place. Now really I'm just reassembling everything. There's that little piece of plastic that needs to go into place. And then you can see that it slides on little rails in there. And then there's this piece of plastic that just goes back into place, and that's going to hold the that little piece of plastic that slid on the rails in place, and I'll just install those 3 screws right back into the vacuum, and that's almost done, in fact. And then obviously the last thing I'm going to have to do is reconnect this little red piece of plastic. There is a little clip on it, so it does snap into place. And then you just take that super tiny screw that they give you and just fasten it into place. Obviously be careful with it. It is not a strong piece of plastic. I'm sure this is a common point of failure for other people as well. So that's how it works. You can see that there's a little crossover hose, and obviously you need that internal hose to allow it to switch to the beater bar head. So I'll just put the sides on. Obviously the filter goes on, and the side gets screwed into place with that purple bluish piece of plastic. Flip it over, put the other side on. There's some washers, there's that plastic nut, and then there's that little piece of plastic, which is the cap. I will put the beater bar back on. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to take it off, but I just found it was easier to have it off than it would have been to have it on. So I kind of advise that, and that just gets fastened into place with a big red plastic clip if you've never taken that off. If you've never taken it off before, you might want to pull it off and just clean it as well. I found that mine was pretty dirty. And that's it. So like I said, I did watch a few other videos that other people have made on this. They all took a lot more of this vacuum cleaner apart than I did. So I think that this is probably the least intrusive method to get this internal hose in that you just don't have to take very much of the vacuum apart. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.